Right now at noon, an officer-involved shooting in Northwest Arkansas sends 2 to the hospital.
We've still got our alert days today into tomorrow as we're watching flooding concerns across part of the area. We'll take a look at that forecast coming up.
And we have liftoff. SpaceX launches 4 astronauts into space overnight. How this trip is making history around the world.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
A teen is shot after an officer-involved shooting in Springdale, Arkansas. This is KOAM News at noon. I'm Tanya Bach. Topping our first 7 minutes, 1 woman and a teen are hospitalized following a Wednesday morning shooting in Springdale, Arkansas. Officers responded just before 1 a.m. to reports of a shooting. Now, the caller said a woman was banging on his door, saying she had been shot in the arm. When officers arrived, they were told the alleged shooter was inside an SUV parked nearby. Police say they found a man lying in the back seat covered with a blanket. When officers asked him to show his hands, he sat up and pointed a pistol at one of the officers. The officer then fired his own weapon, shooting the suspect in the head. Officers rendered first aid on both shooting victims until paramedics arrived. The identity of the male is not being released at this time, only that he is a minor. The Washington County Sheriff's Office is now handling the investigation. Well, the Joplin School District allocates funding to test the safety of drinking water in all of its school buildings. The Joplin School Board approved $400,000 for lead testing. This decision follows a statewide mandate signed into law by Governor Mike Parson last summer, which requires all public school districts to conduct lead testing and install filters if lead concentrations exceed a certain threshold. Now, Missouri American Water provides water for the district and says it has not found any trace of lead in the newer buildings. Well, we've got some water headed our way. Chris Warner joins us with the first look at the forecast.
Yeah, we mentioned that we'd start to see a few scattered storms out there, and we're starting to see those. We'll take a look at that in a moment. But I want to remind you, we still have our alert days today and tomorrow. We've got the thunderstorms, the heavy rain, and the flood watches, and flooding is the reason for these alert days. Taking a live look at our camera at 7th and Rangeline, we've been socked in with clouds all day. It's getting a little darker out there. That's why we decided to go with the MoDOT camera at I-44 and Rangeline. Looking back to the south-southwest, you can see those darker skies, and I'm going to show you why those skies are darker. This is why. Take a look. We're getting showers and thunderstorms, and we've got 1 severe thunderstorm warning in Washington County. We've got this line of storms that's starting to roll off to the northeast at about 40-45 miles an hour, and as we take a look over in southeast Kansas, we're starting to get some development out there. So remember, we do have that possibility for a strong storm or two today, and we're starting to see some of those pop up. All right, flood watches. We've still got Delaware, Benton, McDonald, Newton, Berry, and Lawrence counties all under flood watches until noon tomorrow because that's where we are expecting some of that heaviest rainfall. We started yesterday at 44, made it up to 62. We're not going to quite make it that warm today. Temperatures around the region look like this: 43 Iola, 47 Fort Scott, 54 Miami, 55 Neosho. We're sitting at 52 in Joplin. So here's a look at what we are keeping an eye on. The heavy rain and thunderstorms moving in this evening. And again, with this first batch and maybe even the later batch, a strong storm or two is possible. Our biggest concern, though, is flooding, especially in those areas that were highlighted in flood watches. There's still a very light possibility of a stray flurry or two heading into tomorrow morning. We're going to take a more in-depth look at this forecast and those rain totals here in just a few minutes. Tanya?
All right, thanks, Chris. Investigators are examining what look like explosives found at a Pennsylvania airport. A man allegedly dropped off a bag on Monday at Lehigh Valley International Airport in Allentown. Now, this flight was bound for Florida, but he never got on it. 40-year-old Mark Muffley is now in custody. Officials say he fled when security called his name. He was later arrested at home. A top prospect in this year's draft turned himself into authorities overnight after being charged with reckless driving and racing. Georgia Bulldogs star defensive lineman Jalen Carter was booked and released. Now, criminal charges are in connection with the January 15th car crash that killed his teammate Devin Willock and recruiting staff member Chandler LeCroy. Manuel Bajorquez reports from Athens, Georgia.
According to an arrest warrant, Jalen Carter and Chandler LeCroy were driving in a manner consistent with racing at about 2:30 a.m. Evidence showed both vehicles switched between lanes, drove in the opposite lanes of travel, and drove speeds over 100 miles per hour. LaCroix struck 2 power poles and several trees with Willock riding as a passenger. Both died from their injuries. Carter allegedly told investigators he wasn't there at the time of the crash, and in a statement yesterday he wrote, "There is no question in my mind that when all of the facts are known, that I will be fully exonerated of any criminal wrongdoing."
He's someone who's projected to be one of the top picks in the NFL draft, and we'll see if he still will be.
Seth Emerson is a senior writer at The Athletic covering Georgia football. He says Carter is one of the best defensive players Georgia's had in recent years.
It's going to be a matter, I think, of a lot of NFL teams deciding how much risk tolerance they can have to this situation. It's going to cause them to do a lot more due diligence on Jalen Carter and look into his background and see if there's anything there.
The January accident has shaken the Athens campus. Yesterday, linebacker Nolan Smith, NFL-bound himself, spoke for the first time about his fallen teammate Devin Willock just before the news broke about Carter.
I get sensitive talking about it just because I love him. And he never did anything wrong in his 3 years. He was supposed to graduate. Most people don't know his brother passed like that. No one should deserve to die like that.
Georgia coach Kirby Smart said the school is cooperating with the investigation. He called the charges, quote, deeply concerning. If convicted of those 2 misdemeanor charges, Carter could face up to 2 years in prison. Manuel Bojorquez, CBS News, Athens, Georgia.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with his Russian counterpart during a summit in India today. This is the first meeting between U.S. and Russian officials since the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Blinken reiterated that the U.S. will continue to support Ukraine in its fight for freedom. He also urged Russia to rejoin the New START nuclear arms control treaty, which President Vladimir Putin announced he is withdrawing from. Blinken also urged Russia to release Paul Whelan, an imprisoned American citizen. That's a look at today's top stories and weather in our first 7 minutes. Up next on KOAM News at noon, SpaceX takes off with a new crew headed to the International Space Station. And later, we're making anytime potatoes in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen. Well, a SpaceX rocket blasted off overnight from the Kennedy Space Center on its way to the International Space Station, carrying 4 astronauts. Now, the crew includes 2 Americans, a Russian cosmonaut, and an astronaut from the United Arab Emirates. Mark Strassman reports from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
This launch was picture perfect. The weather, the SpaceX astromechanics, Florida's clear midnight sky.
If you enjoyed your ride, please don't forget to give us 5 stars.
But space voyaging, sailing in the stars, is fraught with risk. Back in December, a micrometeoroid hurtling 15,000 miles per hour hit a Soyuz capsule docked to the ISS. Its punctured radiator gushed coolant.
It's never far from our thoughts either.
Steve Bowen, this new mission's commander, told us space risk is omnipresent. He remembers taking a spacewalk once and seeing a shooting star below his feet.
It's a real risk, and it's a known risk. Our capability of tracking that debris is improved, but it's not perfect.
Despite a low point in relations between Washington and Moscow, they still cooperate in space. This crew includes a Russian cosmonaut, 2 Americans, and Sultan Al-Niyadi, only the 2nd astronaut from the United Arab Emirates to go to space.
We have a myth that if you count stars, a star might come down and brings you to space. So that was my hope.
Endeavour. This mission's Crew Dragon reusable capsule now carries a crew into space for the 4th time, a record for SpaceX, NASA's Uber ride to the ISS.
Any qualms about that?
I'm very excited to get to fly on Endeavour. I want to fly on one that's tested, so I don't have qualms about flying the 4th flight of a Crew Dragon.
Mark Strassman, CBS News, at the Kennedy Space Center.
Well, the trip to the International Space Station is expected to take a little more than 24 hours, and the crew will live in space for 6 months and perform roughly 200 science experiments. Still to come on the KOAM News at noon, Mr. Food.
If you're looking for the perfect side dish, look no more. We've got it, and it goes with just about everything.
And after the showers and thunderstorms and heavy rain we're going to get through tonight, we're going to actually have a fairly beautiful weekend ahead of us. We'll take a look at that full forecast when we come back. Welcome back to the KOAM News at Noon. We are continuing to track our rain chances across the area, and that's why we do have 2 alert days. It's today and tomorrow as we're watching the possibility of some very heavy rainfall across the area, and we do have those flooding concerns. So let's take a look at the Skywatch Storm Tracker. As we mentioned this morning, we were expecting this afternoon some showers and thunderstorms to develop, and by golly, that is exactly what they're doing. We're even getting some additional development now in our western counties. Nothing going crazy going there, but take a look at this line going on. We actually have a severe thunderstorm warning. It's outside of our immediate area and it's moving away from us, but this is for Washington County and it's going to move off to the northeast. But this whole line of storms is moving off to the northeast. So it's this part of the tail that we want to keep an eye on as these storms race off at about 40-45 miles an hour to the northeast. We're starting to get these stronger storms starting to roll into Ottawa County, and you can see plenty of lightning, heavy rainfall there. And this is what we were talking about before, is the possibility of a strong storm or two, and we do have those starting to develop in northeast Oklahoma and northwest Arkansas. Flood watches, just a quick reminder for Delaware, Benton, McDonald, Newton, Berry, and Lawrence counties this evening through noon tomorrow, and that's because we're still expecting a hefty amount of rainfall along and to the south of I-44. You can see up by Cassville, a little over 2 inches of rain expected. All of us, though, getting in on the rain activity and the thunderstorm activity, but the heaviest of it's going to be right through where those flood watches are out there. And as mentioned, the possibility for a strong storm or two does exist as we head through the afternoon hours. There's a very slight chance of an isolated tornado, but this is to our southeast because the worst of the severe weather today is going to be to our south, and they are expecting a pretty decent severe weather outbreak down there. But for us, we're just looking at a few strong storms possible with some small hail and gusty winds being the primary risk with those. So here's those storms as we go through the rest of the afternoon, and they lift on out of here. Then we get into this evening, and that's when the main batch of storms that's going to be building off of the severe weather to our south is going to roll our way. Now, these storms, again, may be a little bit on the strong side, but for the most part, we're just looking at the heavy rain out of this. Again, the worst of the severe weather to our south. So by 6 o'clock, rolling into the area. By 8, look at the coverage on these showers and storms across the region and the heavy rainfall. We get a brief break, another round rolls through, and then we look at redevelopment taking place across southeast Kansas as we head into early tomorrow morning with another line of showers, thunderstorms, and heavy rain rolling on through here. And you'll note on this particular forecast model that snow opportunity did not appear. So we're looking less likely for snow tomorrow morning. Camera at 7th and Range Line is cloudy. MoDOT camera I-44 and Range Line looking to the southwest. You can see the darker skies associated with those storms down there. Let's take a quick look at our currents. We're at 52 in Joplin. We got that east-northeast breeze at 16, gusting to 24. As we mentioned, the wind gust would pick up. We got 43 Iola, 51 Chinook, 50 Chitopa, 54 Miami, 55 Neosho, and we're sitting at 51 in Carthage. As we go through the rest of the day, looking at highs in the lower 50s. We'll have those scattered thunderstorms through the afternoon, and then we've got that better chance of showers and thunderstorms as we head through the evening down to a low of 40 tonight. And okay, well, I'm going to have to take just a moment here. Let's look at the 7-day real quick. You can see where we've got a decent weekend. We did mention that up into the 60s, clear skies looking pretty good. Showers build back in as we head into next week and temperatures begin to cool down. And Daniel Camp back there, if you can stick with me for just a moment, we have a new severe thunderstorm warning that we are going to get for Ottawa County and parts of Delaware and Mayes counties. So let's take a quick look at what we've got going on with this severe thunderstorm warning. All right, so this is for East Central Craig, northwestern Delaware, and Ottawa County until 1 o'clock. This is a severe thunderstorm moving northeast at 50 with 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. So it's on its way to Miami, Grove, Commerce, Fairland, Afton, Quapaw, Bernice, Wyandotte, Pitcher, Bernice State Park, Cleora, Narcissa, Ottawa, Peoria, Cardin, and the Twin Bridges State Park, as well as I-44, between mile markers 287 and 324. So we'll keep an eye on this severe storm as it rolls through the area. And as again, after we get through all of this, we got a pretty pleasant weekend shaping up for us. But we'll continue to monitor this storm and bring you updates as they come in.
All right, that's for sure. Good catch there, Chris. All right, thank you. Well, stick around. We're making anytime potatoes after the break. Today, we're making the perfect casserole for any occasion. Howard shows us how to make his anytime potatoes in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen.
When it comes to dinner, whether you're just throwing something together during the week or you're planning on fussing all weekend long, you want to make sure you have a good go-along to round out the meal. So when we came up with this creamy potato casserole, which is fast and fancy, I knew I needed to share it with you. We start by mixing a can of cream of chicken soup with a bit of butter. Now, we add some sour cream and a few off-the-shelf spices. After it's mixed well, we add some frozen hash brown potatoes that we've thawed, and we toss everything together, making sure the potatoes are well coated. This goes into a baking dish, and for the part that really makes it stand out, we top it with a mixture of seasoned breadcrumbs mixed with a bit of Parmesan cheese. Now we'll pop this into the oven until it's heated through and the topping is golden and crispy. And whether you serve this with a burger or roast pork, you can't go wrong. It's creamy, it's satisfying, and it goes with everything. To get the recipe for our anytime potatoes, simply visit our website. I know you'll be glad you did. I'm Howard in the Mr. Food Test Kitchen, where today we found an amazing anytime way for you to say, ooh, it's so good, with Callie.
All right, we do have that severe thunderstorm warning now for Ottawa County, just for Ottawa County now, just updated. These are winds up to 60 miles an hour and half-dollar size hail. It is moving off to the northeast now at 50 miles an hour. So if we do just a quick, you can see on that latest refresh just how fast it is moving. So that's going to put it in Wyandotte by 12:35, Joplin by 1:19, Carthage 1:43, and Sarcoxie by 1:51. So just be aware of that. And of course, we'll continue to track these storms as they move through the area and bring any updates as they come in.
All right, what do we have coming up tonight at 5?
Well, it's one of the leading causes of disability worldwide, but there are early warning signs for migraines. In Health Watch, what you need to know to help you find relief from those devastating headaches. Plus, 52 Franklin Tech students advanced to the state skills competition, and some Carthage Elementary students are taking a flight to Japan. The latest on those stories and, of course, the severe weather all coming up. KOAM News at 5.
I don't know if you're aware, Dow, but we've got a bit of a celebrity in the studio today. Apparently there's a specific line you have to say to get your foot in the door. Check this out.
In fact, it was damn near impossible for our newscasters around the country to believe it's March.
March, can you believe it?
March, can you believe that?
March, can you believe that?
March, can you believe that? We're starting to make an impact. There are inroads being made, but it's hard to believe they're still doing this. In Washington, D.C.